Okay, quickly, get your seats. And it's gone quiet again. Right. Thank you very much. It was a bit of an honor to be asked to lead this panel. And I think it's going to be an interesting piece in terms of where does record breaking sit in terms of adventure? And I've got some notes here about ideas that have picked up things. Can those who are in the other side be quiet? Because we can hear you. So just tying in with a comment that Simon had made at dinner last night and in his presentation, that adventure meets knowledge. And I would say that record breaking has to be in that level of adventure. You're in the unknown. You're in the uncertain. So one of the questions I've got is, how do you share the knowledge across the communities, the boundaries that are there, the wider community? Karen, you made a comment that said, respect the risk. And I've got a fair amount of, I'm going to say, academic ideas about the risk. So to all of you, what does risk mean? Bearing in mind that it's socially constructed. So do record-breaking divers have a different view of risk to the wider community that's out there? I'll start with you, Nuno, and I'll move around so we won't go in the same orders each time.
I don't think we have a different view of risk. I think the way I see it, we will take a risk, but we don't think we are taking a risk. I think we've mitigated all the possible issues that make it risky to do those dives. So we've worked hard at it for long periods of time, perfecting whatever technique we use to do the dives. So I don't think, when I do a dive, I don't feel that I'm taking a great risk, because I've been increasing sort of my depth gradually over a long period of time. I've tested the equipment. I know that the equipment fails. Everything fails. Every single piece of equipment that I've used has failed over the years. The one risk that you are taking maybe is extending the decompression for a deeper depth, which probably wasn't done before. So there's going to be some risk there, but on the other hand, you've probably compensated for that in some way to make it to a level that you think it's safe. So it's not really as risky as some people think, because you've prepared for it.
And even though a third of the numbers that you described yesterday end up in fatalities.
Okay, look, I'm talking about myself, but not every diver is the same.
And that was the bit. So Karen, go on. Your perceptions then?
So I don't think that we have a different perception of risk. I think we understand the risks that we're taking. And let's be honest, every time you put your head under the water, you are at risk. Obviously, that risk increases exponentially as you go deeper, but then you put in a lot more time and effort and work to mitigate the risks that you are exposing yourself to get them to an acceptable level. So I think the risk is the same, and I guess we're all different in terms of the level of risk we are willing to accept when we embark on a dive.
So for him, there's something really important, which is the comfort zone. And so that comfort zone, you have to gradually increase it. And the deeper you're going to go, and the more you need to go back to your comfort zone. And that's the way that years after years you can increase the depth at which you're going to go. And that's why the exploration are going deeper and deeper and further away.
Which brings me nicely into the next bit, which was what my plan was, that in the science of risk management, we as humans very rarely manage risk. Risk is done through numbers, and we don't have quantifiable data that says the likelihood is this. And I was joking about the third piece, and Simon brought out those numbers, and that discriminator is not very good. What we do manage is uncertainties, and uncertainties are managed through biases and heuristics, mental shortcuts, which then brings this bit of yesterday, it hasn't happened to me, therefore it won't happen. We have confirmation bias. We have recency bias. I haven't heard about this, or it hasn't happened for a while, so it's not something that I encounter. Nathalie and I were talking yesterday about her 75-kilometer dive and how she manages some of those cognitive biases within a group by having a team of specialists who can say no. And if they say no, she follows, gets a bit upset, but you take that. So I'd ask each one of you, how do you manage the biases that exist in your head because you want to get on and do it? So I'll start with you, Karen.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think when you have a goal, you become very goal-orientated. And I know I've been there where you are so focused on achieving that next step target that you forget about all the things that are going on around you, and you push for that. And I think that's where it's important to listen to your team members. I have a really great team. All of them know that at any point in any dive, they can say, we're not doing this, and that's it. Everyone's going to respect that decision. So they often do keep me in check and tell me maybe today's not the day, maybe we need to take a step back, maybe we need to reevaluate that, because as I said, when you are very goal-focused, often you are blind to those things around you.
So the issue is that nowadays, with the configuration we have, with a double DPV, double rebreather, or even triple rebreather, we can do dives kilometers away or even 300 meters deep alone. And for him, the team members are there just for the comfort. So we try to prepare the dive technically by ourselves, alone. But, so there will not be any problems. So a dive to 50 meters or 300 meters is basically the same equipment when you dive with a double or triple CCR. And with the training, you repeat basically the same dive with the same equipment and with the same technique and the same skills. So in terms of tanks, you don't need a lot. So you can take it by yourself. And if you want to eat or drink, but you have everything in your pocket or attached on the DPV.
Okay, I'll come on to you. All right, go. How do you manage it, Nuno? And we'll come to build on top of that. So,
okay, so how do I manage
The heuristics, the biases, the goal orientation to
Yes.
make it happen.
Yeah,
How do you manage
yes,
that?
Yes. Look, often when you're going to do a dive like this, there could be press, could be TV, and you feel that you have to do it. That's not my case. I've got into a situation a number of times where I was going to do it, then I saw, well, this is not it. It's not going to happen today. Sorry, guys. It's out. And that's even before the dive started. If I start the dive and I feel, no, this is not going, I have no qualms about stopping, turning around, and coming up. And I'll say, okay, this is going to happen next week, tomorrow, next year. It's just not going to happen today. And I don't have to give any reasons. I just say, that's it, it's not happening. And the same, just remember that you have a lot of team members. And also, I'm looking at the team members because they're very vulnerable as well. You know, like one of the examples that I gave, one of the divers succeeded, but his buddy died. One of the support divers died, and later the wife of one of the divers committed suicide. That's a tragedy. So if you see it's not going to happen, I mean, in that dive, they had a lot of leaks from the bell, closed bell. It was leaking gas. On the way down, they pushed it. They had pressure to do it. I don't give any attention to pressure from anybody. If it's not going to happen, it's not.
Do you think that your team would be able to say to you, we're not doing this, Nuno?
If somebody from the team told me...
No. Do you think they could say that? Not if they could, but do you think they could with everything that's riding on it? The investments, the gas, the time, the record, the media. How easy do you think it is for a support team to say no?
Yes, they could. Yes. Especially because when I do those kind of dives, there's always one person that's in charge of the dive, and it's not me. And that person could say no.
Okay, so having a separate person which ties in with,
Yes.
with Nathalie's piece. Yeah, go.
So for Xavier, he did his deep dive on CCR, which he considered a little bit different as logistic compared to an open circuit dive. So with the redundancy of CCR, the assisting divers are just there for the comfort, because if something is going to happen on the water, the worst case would be, comment tu dis syncope? Syncope, like passing out. And the diver has 10 hours of decompression. Then the assisting divers, there's nothing he can do. So for him is that the worst case scenario would be passing out, you know, and then what's gonna assisting divers gonna be able to do?
Cool.
Nothing.
And that brings me on to a later question I had, and it's really good that you showed the video, and it allows more detailed questions to be asked. So, as I understood, you have a 100-meter safety diver, an 80-meter safety diver, and a 60-meter diver.
So usually the deep diving meeting are just to be sure that he's coming back at that depth. And then in the shallower depths, it's just for comfort.
Okay, so if that 60-meter diver, in your case, you had your in-area DCS, if you had suffered from that DCS and the 60-meter support diver came down, what would they do? What would be the protocol to deal with that? Yes, so.
Nothing, because it's to him to take care of it.
Okay, that's really cool. So in the safety science space, we have something called safety theater. And that is where we have a presentation of this is safe. But in reality, that person arrives and goes, oh, now what? So does that safety diver do anything?
So the safety diver is going to take the information about if everything is going well or no. And maybe we'll bring back some more food or drink.
And hope you haven't died in the process. And hope you haven't died in the process.
And it's really like to have, a comfort meeting with someone at some point.
Okay, so it's a psychological thing, not a technical thing.
Yes, it's more
Brilliant.
Psychological for him than anything else.
That's cool. And that brings me on to Karen's piece yesterday of emergency action plan, or not yesterday, from last year when you talked about validating things. So having an emergency action plan, which I think, yes, we've got something, but actually it's a comfort thing, not a safety thing. Whereas actually last year you were talking about preparations and validating. So can you talk about how you validate your safety plans?
Well, I don't know if they were validated, but I think... Yes. So I mean, I think we did a little differently. So the support divers, and again, in a real life emergency, how it's going to pan out, you never really know until it happens. But the support divers were there for a little bit more than support. Obviously, they came down to check if you're okay, but what we did is we had two people, one bounce diver to relay news to the surface if something was wrong, and then the surface could start prepping emergency evacuation or whatever needed to happen, and somebody else is going to stay with you. What they can exactly do for you is probably not much, but they can probably prevent you from drowning and help you dive if you're not able to dive for yourself. So those are things we practiced, and we did a lot of that leading up to the dive. But again, as I say, when you're doing it and everyone's calm and it's not a stressful environment, it's probably not exactly how it'll turn out in a real life situation.
Okay, so I'll start with the deepest safety diver. My deepest safety diver is deeper. It's at least 120, maybe a little bit deeper, like 124. And from that time onwards, there will be a diver with me all the time. In other words, the deep safety diver has got his own safety diver as well. So if something does go wrong with me, like if I had to get isobaric counter-diffusion in the decompression, they would help me. They would stay with me, make sure I've got the regulator in, I've got the right gas, all of that. In the case, for instance, of Don Shirley, when he was diving with Dave Shaw, the safety divers saved him. He had very bad inner ear decompression sickness, and the safety divers basically did everything for him. They saved him all the way until the surface. So they stayed with him. So in my case, I think the safety divers are not just observers. They have things that they have to do. They have to bring you liquids to drink. They have to if you want something, they're going to go and fetch it and bring it back. And so they, especially at the critical points, they have to really be wide awake.
Cool. And that brings, in the next bit is, bearing in mind you can't make all the mistakes yourself, especially at the depths you're operating. 2 questions then. What do you learn from other record-breaking divers, and what can others learn from you? So I'll start with you, Karen.
Yes.
I think that there's always an opportunity to learn. So you can see how other people are doing their dives and take away from that, especially the safety aspects of that, or see how not to do it, right? If something goes wrong and maybe it's a critical point and there wasn't a safety diver there, you can see maybe how not to do things or how to do things better. I know certainly from all the dives that I do, and not just the really deep dives, but we often debrief as a team afterwards, where every single person on the team, from the person sitting on the surface to the deep support diver, gives feedback in what worked well and what didn't work well, and how do we make it better next time. And I think that that's an opportunity to learn, obviously, and to, if do it again, to make sure that you do it better. I guess not really. At events like this, if they come up, there's an opportunity to share them. But otherwise, I suppose not. But I know within in South Africa, we have what we do as technical diving workshops, which we host every now and again. And people that want to attend are entitled to attend, where we have these open discussions that people can comment.
So there's no training to basically who's going to teach you how to do like those deep diving. So we take the knowledge from the previous people who did those deep dive, either by listening to what they said or being one member of their own team and learn from that. And through the literatures of the divers who did those deep dive before. And then with the debriefing after each deep dive with others. And to share what happened to us after our own dive. So the others can learn from what happened and build up from our experience. So they can see their own dive with the most safety, with more safety element.
Okay, and then tying in again, because you gave information, why wasn't inner ear DCS considered as a risk for the event, for your dive?
So DCS was part of the thing that he was ready for. Vestibular, he wasn't ready for that. But at those depth and distance, because it wasn't not just going down a shaft, but there was also a distance. The only way to treat a decompression sickness for him was underwater. So whatever it was a type 1 or type 2 incident. So the only way to recompress the bubble was to go down, deeper. So whatever the type of DCS, it would have been any way to go deeper and then come up. So if had that happen, you have to go down to 10 or 15 meters lower, and then just wait that go through.
Okay, fine. And that ties in Nuno's piece of having somebody. So Nuno, go on.
Okay, so let's start off. I've analyzed every single dive, every single record dive, in great detail. Going back to the time of Assen Meyer, he's the first man to dive to 200 meters using Buhlmann. So every single dive that's happened, success or failure, I've tried to obtain all the information that I can. What gas they used, how they did it, how they didn't do it. I dove with Shaq Exley. I saw exactly how he did it, what he did that I didn't agree with, and what he did that I learned from him. So I go, I mean, right up to date, I do that.
So what did you learn?
All the time. I learn a lot. I mean, I learned, for instance, that one single buoyancy compensator is a no-no. Relying on a dry suit for buoyancy is also a no-no. I learned what equipment works, what equipment doesn't work, what factors of safety one should use, if it's too much, too little, what partial pressure one should use, gas density problems,
I think
narcosis problems.
From what you said as to how you manage your dives, I think the biggest takeaway is having somebody else in the water with you is probably the bit. And tying in with here is, okay, if it goes wrong, and they probably can't help me. And you're on your own. And that's a very different mentality from what you two have described as having team support.
But I'm not finished. How do I pass my knowledge? Okay, so how do I pass my knowledge? First, I've written a book. And it's got all the deep dives that I did, and it's got a lot of divers that died, and what did they do, and what didn't they do. So my book tells you quite a lot, and also I've published a paper or two on my thoughts, especially relating to narcosis of gases, and which gases are more narcotic, less narcotic, how to calculate the effect of all the gases. So I try to pass my knowledge on as much as I can.
So I was just going to comment, and I think the different thinking in terms of the teams and having someone there with you, and this might spark a bit of a debate, but I think it's a OC versus CC, like an open circuit versus closed circuit, and this is a trend that I've certainly seen in that more people are diving closed circuit. We have this machine that does everything for us. I don't need anybody else. I've got this machine that's going to keep me alive, and I'm okay. And I see it. I dive with a mixed team of open circuit and closed circuit, and I certainly see the open circuit divers are maybe a little bit more conservative in terms of who they have with them and the team that they have to support them than the closed circuit divers.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, so Xavier was saying that if he has done that dive on open circuit, of course the team and the safety diver would have played a different role, maybe the same way for you guys, but because it was on rebreather for him, it was mainly to have a team ready, like from Comex in France, to decide what kind of gas, you know, so the team was more important for the preparation than for the dive itself. Because it was on rebreather, but if it has been on open circuit, it would have been something different. When he started 25 ago for deep diving, it was on open circuit. And he had anywhere between 15 to 20 safety divers. And with CCR, it doesn't need those teams anymore.
Okay, excellent. One of the comments that came up yesterday of ego has no place in a team. So how do you manage the conflict, which from a record-breaking point of view, you've got to have personal ego that drives you forward. That's the positive side of ego. The negative side is you don't listen to people. So you are going to be optimistic because you want to succeed, but part of that problem is we think we can control and negate any of the hazards that are there. So how do you manage that, and how do other people who aren't going to be pushing those same limits, depth, exposure, but their limits, personal limits, how do people manage that optimism? You know?
So you're talking about ego.
Yeah.
Well, I think, as I said before, you're going for a certain depth. That's what you have in the back of your mind. But, so you could say your ego is 400 meters, say, for instance. But after you start the dive, you realize, okay, at this stage, that's as far as I'm going to go, because I'm not going to get to what my ego thinks. So you've got to be flexible when you're doing these dives, sort of so that you don't kill yourself. So because you said that's your target, it doesn't mean you are going to do or die. Well, I mean, you're going to come a little bit close to the die situation because you're doing a record, but there's like a little line that you know, okay, this is the line. But you can only find out what that line is once you're doing it.
And so to you, Xavier, yesterday you described getting down and getting to the depth and going, yeah, I can get down there, and then turning around. But then having left a scooter at 260 meters because you didn't want to have one implode, what would have been your plan if it had imploded at 312 meters?
So if the deeper scooter would have imploded, would I left it there? It would have come back just kicking. So the backup propulsion vehicle are just the fins. So he's aware that as those depths, overbreathing and hypercapnia would have been a factor that you have to think about. So the objective would have been to come up slowly with keeping the calm at the same time, and take advantage of the buoyancy as much as you can to not overexert yourself, with the help of using your hand to push yourself alongside the rocks. To come up as slow as possible with less and less, the minimum effort possible. So the scrubber will not be saturated as it was going up. With what he had on him, he had 30 hours of autonomy. And with the others, so he would have another 20 hours more.
So I don't think there's actually that much ego involved. I mean, when you're preparing for a dive, you don't have the record yet, right? So you have nothing to have ego about. maybe afterwards, but the dive's done and everyone's safe. So I think, obviously you're optimistic. You wouldn't be doing the dive if you weren't. I don't think if there's any point where I think that maybe this dive's not going to go well, then I'm definitely not going to get in the water and do the dive. So at the start of any one of those dives, there's absolutely no egos involved. You do what you think you can do. You get to your limit, and when you call it quits, you call it quits. Both of the dives that I've done, I've not reached my depth limit, because when it's time for me to go, it's time for me to go. The first dive, I didn't have any issues. It just, I'm not comfortable down here anymore. I'm turning around and I'm going back up. The second dive, I ran a little bit low on gas. And it's difficult at that depth. I could just go 5 meters more, and that's like, I've really met my depth target. Maybe I'll be okay, maybe I won't, but at that depth, you don't want to change plans like that. So when it's time to go, it's time to go.
So I'm just going to talk about equipment implosion. So equipment implosion can outright kill you. I was doing a dive with my deep support diver, testing a camera. And I was here, and my buddy was right next to me with his camera housing. It imploded. He was knocked unconscious on the bottom. But his regulator was still on. So I stayed with him, and he was breathing. And then after about 20, 30 seconds, he kind of woke up. So equipment implosion is serious business. And a scooter, it's worse because it's bigger. If the scooter implodes and you're right next to it, you could be gone. Most likely you will be gone.
You want to go back on the ego thing? The ego is the will to succeed, but you still need to be humble enough regarding the way you're doing things. And when even the slightly minor problem occurs, when you're not sure that it's going to be going 100%, it's going to work 100%, even with the weather, then you don't go in.
So one of the things that I recognized yesterday, having watched the video, is it's really easy to spot gaps, to spot things, because we've got hindsight bias. We can see those things. And this ties in with Nuno's piece of successful and unsuccessful dives based on outcomes. And this bit of, are people lucky or are they good when we're talking about a lot of physiological variability? So are there better ways of sharing stories, bearing in mind you have data points of 1 that we're talking about? So what would be your key lesson, a simple lesson, to go to not the record-breaking community, but the diving community in general? What would be your key number 1 lesson to take from your experience?
Key number 1 is you've got to know yourself and what your physiology can handle and what your body can handle. So that's why you have to progress slowly to know yourself. Because what I can do, I think all the record breakers have a different physiology from each other and from other divers that are not doing the record dives. They have higher tolerances than other divers, most likely. That's why they can do it. Because to get a record, you're going to break rules. The normally accepted physiological rules, you're going to have to break them because you won't make the record.
So, ego.
Not ego.
No, but ego is the thing that drives you forward.
No, it's not the ego, it's just a fact.
Okay, so a lot of this is tying into the risk of what's acceptable, and that's why I asked you right at the start.
Yes, but
do you think record breakers have a different
remember, you are testing yourself progressively, slowly, in small steps, to find out if you can push it a little bit further.
So, on that then, given the inter and intrapersonal variability on physiology, so the stuff that David Dulett presented last year, which talks that on this day, the same diver on 2 consecutive days have different physiological responses to the same dive. How does that work?
Yes, but remember, at least the way I do it, when I go for a record dive, I don't arrive there and do it today. That's not how it works. I take like 2 weeks and I start diving with the same equipment, progressively, and I see how it works. Eventually I'll do a fairly deep dive, or no more than I'll do at least 2 or 3 fairly deep dives to see if everything is the same.
So you're making the assumption that your day-to-day variability,
yes,
there isn't any variability.
Well, once you've been building up for like a week and a half, there's not going to be, I don't think, that much of a variability. Eventually, you're going to reach a certain depth, maybe let's say 150 meters. And then you're going to say, okay, now we're stopping, to off gas. Like 3 days, maybe 4 days. Then you do it.
Okay, I know I've reached my limits, and the stuff that was presented last year about the same person doing the same dives and having different physiological responses would go against what you've just talked about.
You're saying, like, from the last dive that I did, I'm going to change quite dramatically.
Yes. And that was done over hundreds.
But okay, so if that happens, you're going to know that when you're going for the record, and then you're going to stop. If you see this is not going to plan, I'm not feeling like I should, then you're going to stop and bail.
Okay, I've run out of my knowledge of this and in terms of the research, but
I do take a lot of time to get to the stage where I actually do the dive. And I'm diving all the time with the exact same equipment. Even if it's 30 meters, same equipment. 60, same equipment.
Okay.
All the time it's the same. Nothing changes.
So, Karen, I get that. The research would show that that's different to what happens when people are on the same thing. So, and I think this is this bit of...
I know what you're saying. I know that maybe, okay, today I do a 60-meter dive, everything good. Tomorrow I do a 60-meter dive and something, my body,
physiological level.
My body fails. Yeah, look, there is a possibility that your body could fail in some way from one day to the next. Definitely is there. But I think you should know yourself well enough to determine if everything is still the same.
Okay.
But you're not God.
So, Karen, what would you recommend from the sort of the wider diving community to take from your learnings? What would be the key takeaway?
I think it's for me, it's to never stop learning. No matter at what level you are in your diving career, there's always something to learn. From every single dive you do, whether the dive goes well or the dive goes badly, there's something that you can take away from that. Obviously if the dive goes badly, there's definitely key points you can learn on how to make it better. But even good dives, you should have a look at why did that dive go well, what went well, and what can I take away from that.
Cool, thank you. Xavier?
So, so Xavier, I don't know if you know the Dunning-Kruger effect. Well, you could talk a bit about it, but lots of his work is based on analysis the Dunning-Kruger effect for his dive and for his preparation.
Okay. So the first presentation I gave at Tech Dive 16 was called Incompetent and Unaware, and it was all about the Dunning-Kruger effect. And that piece, for those who, it's, you don't know, yeah, there we go. We're going to wrap it up. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Arlindo, thank you for the bits. I was looking down here, and thank you for grabbing my attention. Thank you, Nuno, Karen, Xavier, and Nathalie for doing the interpretations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you. Merci, Xavier. Merci, Nathalie. Merci beaucoup pour nous aider à faire tout ça. Maintenant, vous savez, now you know that when we invite someone to come, you have a lot of work. So I know that the next time if we invite you again, if some speaker nominates you to come next year, I know you won't accept the invitation. So Did you hear what I said? Sorry. Okay. So thank you very much, Karen. Thank you very much, Nuno. It was an incredible opportunity to have you all here. I appreciate very much what you are doing for the diving community and for the diving in general with this sharing your problems and being challenged by Gareth through 45 minutes of how do you say when a police is it looked like sometimes it looked like it, but I knew from you it would be something like this. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. So the fourth edition is done. It was a pleasure having you all here. And we will be here once again in 2025. Thank you so much. Thank you.